in 2011. I spent that summer mining Bitcoin on my desktop PC. Forgot about it for a few years. And then my dad definitely threw out that hard drive.
How many Bitcoins were on that hard drive?
Probably at least 1,000.
Oh my God.
And then it was about maybe 2015, 2016, they started tracking the Bitcoin price. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's what I was doing. And I'm like, that's gone. If I had it, it would have been by just pure happenstance and luck. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. Then I just sort of kept paying attention to it for a few years. And that eventually led to the role at Satoshi Action Fund, which I've been at for 3 years now. Regulators are sending a message to banks not to touch crypto. Some people in the government love Bitcoin, but there are certainly people in the government who have a lot of clout, who have the ability to push levers. It's one of the things that government does best is the ability to slow growth and innovation. Over at Satoshi Action Fund, we wrote the legislation that was adopted in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Texas for the strategic Bitcoin reserves. If you're concerned about government shutting down Bitcoin, I would allay those concerns. This technology is going to stick around for a long time. The amount of change that you'll see in 9 months will be extreme. It'll be a very different conversation.
Welcome to Sat Chats, the Bitcoin podcast where we chat about sats. Sats are the smallest part of a Bitcoin, the same way pennies are the smallest part of a dollar. With Sat Chats, we are building the world's biggest Bitcoin welcome center to serve as your gateway to generational wealth. So if you are brand new to Bitcoin, we want to chat about sats with you. Head to satchats.com to grab your slot in the studio today. I'm your host, Stuart, Bitcoin Dad.
And I'm your co-host, Chris, founder and CEO of Ithaca Hummus.
And we have got number 107, Eric, from the Satoshi Action Fund in the virtual studio today. He's going to be telling us his Bitcoin story and cluing all of you Satillionaires into the wider world of regulatory and political elements that do have an impact on your Bitcoin that you may not even know about.
For all you who say, oh, Bitcoin's not regulated. Nobody regulates it. There's no laws. I'm not getting into that.
Yeah, it's regulated.
Yeah, it is.
And we about to find out today.
Yeah.
We're going to find out today. So, Eric, tell us here, rapid fire, how old are you?
I'm 35 years old.
And where do you live?
I live in New Orleans, Louisiana.
What do you do to mine fiat?
I am the policy director of Satoshi Action Fund, which is a nonprofit, nonpartisan education and advocacy organization at the state and federal level for Bitcoin. And sometimes I get paid in Bitcoin.
Before we jump into some of those, more, crunchier aspects of Bitcoin, the regulatory, the stuff that we all really do need to know while we're stacking our sats, help our Satillionaires understand your Bitcoin journey a little bit. Where were you when you first heard about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I was interning in Savannah, Georgia in 2011. And somebody I was working with told me something about a virtual money that I didn't really understand. But I spent that summer mining Bitcoin on my desktop PC because I did not have to pay for power. And when I would go to bed, I would run the Bitcoin protocol and have it mined. Forgot about it for a few years. And then my dad definitely threw out that hard drive.
Dad!
Yeah.
Pause. So what year was this when you were mining on your PC?
It was 2011.
2011. So Eric was early, right?
Epoch 1, right?
That was still 50 Bitcoin per block that you solved, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And how and in your estimation, how many Bitcoins were on that hard drive when your dad freaking yeeted it out of your life into the garbage?
Probably at least 1,000.
Oh my God.
No.
Oh, jeez.
No.
10 milli.
Oh, 1,000. And dude, when I was growing up, Eric, my dad would walk around the house and he would say, what is this? Crap? Throw it away. And it sounds like your dad just did the same thing, man. How did you, I guess, what was the price of Bitcoin, or what was the exchange rate of Bitcoin at the moment when you realized your dad had thrown away 1,000 Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it would be. So I knew what I was doing, but like if you had asked me, like if I was running a wallet or how much Bitcoin at the time, I didn't know really what I was doing. What I knew I was doing was helping people peer to peer exchange value. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. That sounds like a great project. I was an economics major. I'd done some work in tech. Um, and then it was about maybe 2015, 2016 when at work they used to have CNBC on every day. It was like one of the TVs that had it on. And they started tracking the Bitcoin price. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's what I was doing. And I'm like, that's gone. So that was a real bummer.
But that is an insane bummer. And I guess we love pain on this show. Holy moly.
It's 120 million.
So that would be $120 million in today's terms. Woof.
But you know what? I love how you're not so stressed about it. I mean, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and if I had it, it would have been by just pure happenstance and luck, right? I made a conscious choice to mine it, but I didn't find it on my own. I didn't know exactly what I was doing. I didn't have the hardware keys, right? It wasn't like I, was on Mount Gox and buying it for $5.
Yeah.
And then lost it, right? I think that would have been harder. I got half lucky, but not quite lucky enough.
We're going to bring your dad on. We're like, excuse me, sir. Excuse me, Mr. Peterson. We need to have a word with you, right?
Yeah. I would say he still does have his drawer of cords and a VCR.
Yeah. It's like, what? You need that stuff?
He kept the VCR.
You got all these cords that stopped working in the 80s?
He's like, but how am I going to watch Stop or My Mom Will Shoot starring Sylvester Stallone?
Yeah.
I need my VHS. Yeah. So you found Bitcoin early. You saw that it was a way to create peer-to-peer, to kind of support a network of peer-to-peer electronic cash. What about supporting that kind of initiative appealed to you in the first place when you were, that was like 14 some odd years ago.
Good question.
You would have been, barely 19, 20 years old, some odd. What about that was like, hey, this appeals to me?
Yeah, well, I was both a political economy and an economics major at Tulane University down in New Orleans. And, that's when you really start to learn pretty hardcore, like how money, banking, all that sort of starts to work. And like the idea of creating like a new money and the rules and the economics around that was really appealing at the time.
Okay. So you started supporting that. You had some free power. You mined over 1,000 Bitcoin, forgot about it. Dad threw it away. Then you see it later on CNBC. They're tracking the price. You're like, dude, I remember now. And then what happened?
Then I just sort of kept paying attention to it for a few years, kept doing my job up in Washington, D.C. And it wasn't until I moved back to New Orleans where I got a job being a policy director. We launched our own tech and innovation center. And there's a lot of great stuff going on in tech right now. At the time, 5G was coming out. Obviously, AI was, I wouldn't say in its infancy, but a little before that took off. But this was the time that blockchain was really going mainstream. And so what we did is we asked ourselves, like, what would be good policies to help innovation for Bitcoin? And obviously there are other things that are based off of the blockchain that Bitcoin sort of proved the value of for the first time. And that's when I really started going down like the policy rabbit hole and thinking about how to build that out more deeply. And that eventually led to the role at Satoshi Action Fund, which I've been at for 3 years now.
When did you start exchanging your fiat currency for Bitcoin? Like you left it alone for a while. When did you start getting back into it in terms of like buying some?
When it crashed, when it had the crash after FTX and Terra Luna.
Okay. So what year was that?
That was 2022.
2022. Okay. FTX collapses. That was only 2 years ago. That's crazy.
Three.
Dang, what year is it? I remember though, when FTX collapsed, it brought several Silicon Valley banks down with it. A lot of those banks had venture capital inside. And then the industry that I was in, cybersecurity, took a hit because a lot of the money that was powering these new companies and their fledgling technology dried up. So it's that collapse had a lot of ramifications all over the place. So you started buying Bitcoin again, and what was your, I guess not buying Bitcoin again, because you kind of mined it to start off, and then you started buying in 2022. Can you explain to our Satillionaires what your strategy was for exchanging your easy money for hard money?
Yeah, well, first off, if you want to talk about the banking collapse, we can have a 20-minute conversation about that because it was not by FTX. It was 100% government driven. And there's been some stuff coming out over the last year that would be really interesting to talk about.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so most people, if they remember the bank collapses at all, they remember Silicon Valley Bank was the big one that went down. But actually, what happened is Silicon Valley Bank was not the one that was targeted. There was another bank that was targeted. It was called Silvergate Bank. And if you were in the crypto Bitcoin industry at all during that time, you worked or you had your money at Silvergate Bank because Silvergate Bank had an internal ledger that basically was like a proto stable coin that worked 365 24/7. And so if you were settling in large amounts or sending venture money out, you having more of the people you traded with at that bank had gigantic network effects. So you just had a lot of concentration in the industry. And what happened is Elizabeth Warren and banking regulators essentially put their thumb on it, ended up creating a run, even though Silvergate Bank actually had all of their depositors and they were able to make them whole without a bailout. But that panic ended up causing too many people to take their money out of Silicon Valley Bank, who actually didn't have the cash on hand to make the depositors whole. And eventually it had to go into liquidation by the FDIC, and those deposits were sold out. And if you actually look at Signature Bank, which had Barney Frank as one of their board members, that some of your folks might know from the Dodd-Frank banking regulations, they also went under. And he's quoted in the Wall Street Journal at the time saying that regulators are sending a message to banks not to touch crypto. And if you've seen a lot of what's been going on since President Trump has been elected, whatever you think about President Trump, there have been a lot of stories coming out about the debanking of the crypto industry and some executive orders around that fact.
That's great insight.
It's like, I mean, we just had a conversation with, I think it was Ron, who talked about how the fractional reserve banking leads to banks not having enough money to cover their deposits. And then the FDIC doesn't, like, fractionally lends out the money that they have on hand to bail out banks. And, add on to that, Eric saying that, okay, not only is the banking system busted, and was it, who was our compliance lady? Christina? I mean, like, so far in season 2, we've been like exploring this world of banks being messed up. And now you're telling me that on top of all that, the government targeted specific banks and effectively caused them to fail.
They targeted the most crypto friendly bank out there, right? And why would they do that, Eric?
They did that because of pressure from the Senate Banking Committee. And also there is just a variety of folks who wanted to put up walls around the crypto industry and making sure it did not touch the banking industry. And so anyone that was in the business of banking and crypto, they did not want any part of. I mean, we could go for hours about this, but if you look at what Wyoming did with their speedy banks, their special purpose depository institutions, which were 100% backed banks that would custody crypto, and then they had a variety of other ways to make money. They're still suing the federal government because the Federal Reserve denied them their master account, essentially their ability to send dollars to other banks. They said it was risky, even though, of course, they were 100% reserved. So there's no failure risk. And that's been going on for years. And everyone in the industry has known has been going on for years, but over the last 8 months, right, there's been investigations and, more documents have sort of come to light during that period of time.
Why do you think the government wants to slow down, limit, or stop altogether these alternative forms of currency?
I don't think about the government as being one entity, and I think that helps when you view things. The government is made up of tens of thousands of people, all who have various different incentives. Some people in the government love Bitcoin, right? I've met many of those people at the state, federal level, and the regulatory level. But there are certainly, people in the government who have a lot of clout, who have the ability to push levers, that have done this. And, there's a variety of doing ways or reasons to do it. Some might be paternalistic, right? Some really might believe that Bitcoin is all a scam or all of crypto is a scam, right? This definitely happened after the FTX collapse and the Terra Luna collapse. That increased regulatory scrutiny. You could say there's a variety of people who like the way that the current system works. And so they have, I wouldn't say monopolies, but they have a business interest in making sure that innovation doesn't happen. That's a tale as old as time, right? Now we're all used to using Uber and Lyft. At the time, try fighting the taxi companies. It was a disaster. Those fights were brutal. They were state by state. The money spent on lobbying was very high. And eventually we got Uber and Lyft. But it took a long time to get through that. So I think it's a little bit of a combination of both of those things together, coming in concert.
I really do not like hearing stories where it's profitable for a larger, more powerful entity to limit innovation and human progress. I really am not a big fan of that. It doesn't feel good to have someone say, hey, here's this cool new thing that's going to help everyone out. We're going to try to kill it because we're making money on the old way of doing things.
It's one of the things that government does best is the ability to slow growth and innovation. And sometimes there are good paternalistic reasons for doing so. There are, externalities to a variety of things, but many times it is industries that are well entrenched, who are slow to innovate. And when you're slow to innovate, the way to stop people from innovating past you is to use government to slow their innovation. Again, this is not left to the crypto industry or the payments industry or the banking industry. There's a variety of industries you could point this out to. Pretty much any industry that exists.
And what you've used paternalistic or a form of it twice now. What do you mean when you say that?
There's a helping people from making mistakes. A lot of people view that as the role of government. Again, Bitcoin has been a great investment over time, but we could all point out a variety of crypto projects or meme coins that have been terrible investments, that people have recklessly gambled money on unregulated exchanges, or even things like Celsius, which was a place that people had crypto. They deposited their Bitcoin. They thought they were getting 7% yield on their Bitcoin, and it turned out it was a gigantic Ponzi scheme, and people lost 5, 10, 20, hundreds of Bitcoin. So there are reasons, for regulation to say, hey, we want to make sure that entity that you're depositing your Bitcoin is safe and sound. You might say, well, that's up to people to make those sort of decisions and, decide where to custody their Bitcoin or not custody at all. But we're all busy, right? You're a dad. How many of these companies can you look into? Mm-hmm. And isn't it better for the government to give it a stamp of approval or have some baselines that it does to protect consumers? And that's always the push-pull of regulation, is how do you allow innovation while having a baseline for consumers?
What do you think? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? It's what we do every day at Satoshi Action Fund. It's what a lot of other people do in a variety of other industries. A lot of it is what I would call just muddling through. It's figuring out, when Bitcoin popped up, asking yourself, like, what do institutions need to do to protect your Bitcoin is a new question. We hadn't really thought about that before. And, that involves cybersecurity, that involves anti-money laundering, that involves custodial solutions, that involves liquidity requirements, and a variety of other things that you have to come with that is sort of built up organically in the crypto ecosystem we're sitting in right now. And obviously, there's been some fairly massive changes that have come out of Washington, D.C. recently as well.
What are those fairly massive changes you're talking about?
Yeah, so I would put the changes in Washington, D.C. around Bitcoin and the broader crypto ecosystem in three buckets. One are executive orders that have come out of the White House. I think most people saw the executive order about the quote unquote strategic Bitcoin reserve, at least the government having a policy of no longer selling its Bitcoin. For those of you who didn't know that the government owned Bitcoin, it had gotten the majority of that through the Silk Road, but through a variety of other government criminal forfeitures as well. The largest, most recent change was the passage of the Genius Act, which had to deal with stablecoins. Happy to have a conversation about stablecoins, but they're essentially a dollar-backed virtual currency that allows people to move money all over the world much faster, cheaper than our traditional banking system allows. And the other big discussion right now is over something known as the market structure bill that essentially will classify various digital assets, but also place a variety of regulations on exchanges that many of your listeners might use.
So that last one is still in formation. That hasn't become passed by the House or anything like that. That's in talks.
The Clarity Act, which is the House version of the market structure bill, has passed the House with something like 100 Democrat votes. So fairly bipartisan in today's day and age. But it has gone over to the Senate, and the Senate says, well, that's great. We will take it under advice. But they are definitely taking their time to draft something that might be very different. In fact, they just put out something called the Request for Information, where they asked 30 questions, and a lot of folks in the industry have taken their time to write back about that.
What's changed in terms of using Bitcoin as collateral for a loan in the last few months?
Yeah, so in the executive order, or a executive order, the Trump White House had basically provided guidance for various mortgage agencies to take digital assets, not just Bitcoin, but into considerations for people's net worth when making loans. So, I recently bought a house a little under a year ago. You got to show them your bank account. You have to show them your income, any other things that you might own. They decide whether you're credit worthy to, give up, hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase a house. And for the longest time, they had not looked at crypto holdings. So, you could be holding $10 million of Bitcoin, but your bank account says $20,000, and they'll look at that as your essentially net worth. And that is now no longer the case.
You can say, look, man, my dad, he threw it away. Okay. But
Yeah.
It's still on there. It's still on there, and I have it somewhere. Okay. Let me get a loan.
Well, and that's valid, right? I mean, that was probably part of the problem. It's like, okay, well, where is it? How do we validate this? If we need to call your loan, like, how are we going to actually get it? I mean, it takes time for institutions to work things out through some of these innovation cycles. So I like your approach, and I like where your head's at in terms of, we don't want to demonize the people who are genuinely working very hard to keep up with the speed of innovation. It's just, it takes time.
Well, I like where Chris's head is at, because I'm over here like,
everybody's evil.
They're slow.
Yeah.
They're slow. A request for information with 30 questions, bro, yes or no? Can I do it? You know what I mean? They're slow. They're not efficient. They're putting out a request for information because they know they're about to go on that August recess or whatever. Like, yeah, answer these 30 questions while I go on vacation somewhere, and we'll talk in September, whatever, dude. It's like, Let's go, man. Let's go. You just said that the stable coins are a better way of transferring value than the current banking system. And by the way, I would argue Bitcoin is an outstanding global monetary network for exchanging value. But we're going to go slow. I think Chris's idea of saying, hey, these people are genuinely attempting to make sure that, these are the people that put the sticker on the dryer that says, please don't climb inside the dryer and close the door and turn on. It's like, of course I'm not going to climb in the freaking dryer. Like, let me use this tool. I'm a grown up. I can make my own choices. If I put my wealth somewhere and it gets wrecked, I will then have learned something about the marketplace and can go find a more reputable. Anyways, dude.
Here's what I say. That is not an uncommon opinion in the crypto space or the Bitcoin space. I would tell you, having worked in tech policy for over a decade, that the amount of laws and regulatory updates to this industry have gone in lightning speed compared to anything else in tech. This industry right now is winning more than any other industry I've ever seen in my lifetime. And people keep going, what's next? What's next? Why aren't you doing it faster? And I think it's a little bit of not understanding how good they have it, quite frankly.
Okay, so a little bit of perspectivo, a little bit of gratitude.
Yeah, I think the problem that Stuart's experiencing right now is that his expectations are up here and his gratitude's down here.
I need to flip.
You got to flip that.
I need to flip.
And then you'll feel better.
I need to flip. First of all, let me just have a baseline of gratitude for Bitcoin because it's the greatest of all time.
And then you can move on to Eric.
And then let's have some gratitude for Eric, who is patiently working with a many-headed hydra at federal and state levels with people who are pro-Bitcoin. Then you have the lady Elizabeth Warren who wants to shut it all down. And, he's just doing what he can do to help move this thing forward while still giving his dad birthday gifts and Yuletide gifts, giving him calls, giving him text messages. He hadn't cut that man out of his life. Good job, dude.
We had a great time.
Oh, that's great.
If I am a brand new Bitcoiner, or I'm thinking, here's what I want to ask you, Eric. We are in a world where one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful country on earth has indicated its desire to hang on to its Bitcoin and stack more sats. And there is regulation and legislation that is coming out faster than other industries are able to go. You have states that are doing this as well, like Texas and I think New Hampshire. You have institutions doing it. So Bitcoin is turning into this thing that massive organizations and nation states are embracing and adopting. And yet I'm still bringing people into this studio who are like, it's not real. It's a scam. What is what is it going to take for the everyday person in America to understand that Bitcoin is real and that it is being adopted by legitimate organizations that should allow people to increase their trust in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a time where we're hitting what I would call nation actor adoption as well as corporate adoption. Over at Satoshi Action Fund, we wrote the legislation that was adopted in Arizona, New Hampshire, and Texas for the strategic Bitcoin reserves. We've actually wrote a paper where we looked at all 50 states' rainy day funds and looked under various scenarios in which they had purchased small amounts of Bitcoin, gold, or bonds dated back to 2018. 2018 is the first time the CFTC, Commodity Futures Trading Commission, had regulated Bitcoin. So we said that was a good starting point. And we've done a lot of that work and had a lot of success. Again, to my point of the success that we're having and people complaining about the amounts of success, 3 states are allowing their states to invest in Bitcoin. That's wildly fast compared to other industries. And I think we'll probably get one or two more by the end of the year that will also adopt similar legislation going forward. So that's a big change for a lot of folks. I think for most people, really, and this gets a little philosophical about Bitcoin. It has to do with whether Bitcoin is something for peer-to-peer cash, which is written in the Bitcoin white paper and what got me interested in it in the first place, or something that people believe will go up in value over time and is easy to spend. Because expectations matter a lot. They matter for inflation. They matter for our future decisions. And while Steak and Shake is doing a great job at accepting Bitcoin right now, and their sales are up, and it's part of marketing and part of their rebrand of their menu, there are a lot of people who say, well, I don't want to spend my Bitcoin on a burger because my Bitcoin is going to go up in value. I'll give them cash. And it's just as easy to swipe my credit card. And so I think for most people, when they think about Bitcoin, if they can't easily go buy a Steak and Shake burger with it, or see people doing that, they won't think it's real until that period of time. So it's very much the store of value versus medium of exchange debate.
Do you feel like all of the work that you're doing at a blistering pace is to push the store of value aspect of Bitcoin, and that once your work there is finished, there's a whole nother level of legislation or regulation or state by state in order to drive the medium of exchange aspect?
We don't think about policy in that way. At least I don't when I write it. Bitcoin is valuable because it's decentralized and people can choose what they do with it. So the way that we go about writing regulations is, for example, in a lot of the states where we passed our quote unquote Bitcoin rights bill, we expressly allow for Bitcoin to be a valid medium of exchange. We allow for peer-to-peer transfer. We allow for personal self-custody. There's no mandate on any of those things. We also try to deal with the tax implications of that, because right now in most states, if you were to, example, go buy a double steak burger with tallow fries and a shake, you would have to report to the government the cost basis of which you purchased your Bitcoin, figuring out that difference, and then remit the rest to the government in a capital gains tax at the end of the year. Of course, nobody does that, but you technically or theoretically have to do so. And so we want to address that. But in the same way, we've allowed for, or we pushed for people to be able to invest in Bitcoin, including states to invest in Bitcoin. So we're not trying to put our thumb on the scale one way or the other. Bitcoin can obviously be used for both, whether it ultimately ends up more as a store of value or medium of exchange right now. Just a personal opinion, I think it's ending up more as a store of value. And you can tell that because all the stories are talking about the price of Bitcoin, not about how many Bitcoin transactions are taking place. But that doesn't mean it won't change one day. And the purpose is to have a easily understandable code of laws for people who want to do so.
There's something here. Here it is. There is a class of people who are afraid they will get wrecked by the government if they put their wealth into Bitcoin, because the government will, quote unquote, shut down Bitcoin or make it illegal or make it so that it can't be redeemable for the US dollar or who knows what, right? Like there's this fear that the government will, quote unquote, shut down Bitcoin. So as a pre-coiner, I can't stack my first sats. With the federal government, indicating its interest in a strategic Bitcoin reserve, with this legislation and regulation, with the different states choosing to stack sats, are we in a world where it would be against the government's interests to do so? Like, has the government adopted Bitcoin to the point where we can now, when we have a guest here, we can say, no, the government's not going to shut down Bitcoin because the government has Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think that's the wrong way to go about that argument. And let me explain why. First off, China has banned Bitcoin again. But let me tell you, in China, there is still plenty of people mining Bitcoin or owning Bitcoin or transacting in Bitcoin for a variety of reasons. In fact, a lot of people who live in mainland China find ways to purchase Bitcoin from non-mainland China to specifically get around that ban. So with all the authoritarian tools that the Chinese Communist Party has, they haven't been able to quote unquote shut down Bitcoin. I think what the deeper question that those people are actually getting at is they're saying Bitcoin has a value now of $120,000 a coin, let's say. And if the government decides that Bitcoin is going to be illegal or quasi illegal, what it's actually going to do is not going to take away my Bitcoin. It's going to take away the purchasing power of my Bitcoin. And that's actually what they're concerned about. What I would say the difference is between China and the United States is that we live in a representative Republican form of democracy. The government doing this isn't doing it out of its self-interest, and because the government doesn't have self-interest, there is no the government. The government doesn't exist. The government is made up of political actors who have a variety of interests. And what we've seen is that people who own digital assets like Bitcoin have said, hey, this is important to me, and has really driven various governments to change their policies. And if you actually want the government to be pro Bitcoin, pro digital asset, pro whatever, we have mechanisms in there to make sure that we get those sorts of policy changes versus just a day one. Bitcoin is bad now. We live in a federalist system where the ability for one person to do that, as opposed to China, doesn't really exist.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the U.S. government would need more than just a single edict to even attempt to take away our purchasing power through legislation or through a declaration. And even if they could, it would be as successful as the Chinese Bitcoin ban, which is to say, not successful at all because it is decentralized and permissionless. So it's almost like the government is declaring that, gravity must now be 9.9 meters per second squared, not 9.8. And gravity's like, cool story, bro. Those are just words you're using that have no impact on me.
Yeah, I mean, I think government policy definitely has impact on the price of Bitcoin. I think that's incredibly clear. When on election day when Trump got elected, again, whatever you think of President Trump, he had marked himself out as being the pro crypto candidate, and markets responded by pushing up the price of the asset. Let's not mince words. The United States is a large economy. And if the United States reversed its policy to be more anti-Bitcoin, maybe something we've seen over the past 4 years, it would certainly have a price impact on Bitcoin. It would not impact your ability to use Bitcoin. But what I'm suggesting is that if people ultimately get to put pressure on the government for their preferred policies, and if people say like Bitcoin is important to us, and the more that Bitcoin becomes owned by people, used by people, the harder it will be to reverse many of those policies.
So if you could take half a minute to explain to one of our pre-coiners here in the audience why they should start stacking sats now and what that's going to look like into the future as this clarity increases over time through your efforts in the Satoshi Action Fund, etc. What would be your half-minute pre-coiner pitch?
Yeah, let me start off by saying, right, I don't give financial advice. I generally don't tell people to buy Bitcoin. That's not what we do. But I would say if you're concerned about government shutting down Bitcoin, pro crypto, or clarity laws for crypto have been passing at an increasingly bipartisan rate across the country. I work with Republicans and Democrats. Democrats in Louisiana, or Republicans in Louisiana, and Democrats in California. We're working with them all to pass good bills around this stuff, and people understand that it's here to stay. And I think eventually, when we get a market structure bill, you will see many Democrats vote for it. And I think if you see good bipartisan legislation, that should be a signal that this technology is going to stick around for a long time. And so it going away, tomorrow or under government edict, that probably gets very, very low. So if that's the reason that you're deciding not to invest in Bitcoin, I would allay those concerns.
Nice.
I love that.
That's good. That's good. I think that's going to help a lot of people, actually. Bitcoin and the world of increasing adoption like you are is just so big that we will never be able to fit it into a single chat about sats. So we do ask each of our guests if they would be willing to come back in 9 months to give us an update on their Bitcoin baby. Would you be willing to do that for us, Eric?
Yeah, the amount of change that you'll see in 9 months will be extreme. It'll be a very different conversation. If you were to think about where we were 9 months ago, there was no state had passed a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The United States government had not put out that executive order. Jamie Dimon was still talking about how Bitcoin was a fraud and scam used by money launderers, and now they're partnered with Coinbase, so you can get money out of Chase Bank into Coinbase sooner to buy Bitcoin. That is all happened in the last 9 months.
What do you think is going to be that landscape 9 months from now? You're saying that, hey, it's going to be wildly different. What does that look like for us? Because it's going to be, what month is it? August? So it's going to be May, I think, when you come back on. What do you think is going to be the situation at that time?
So I would say there will be a market structure bill passed. I do not think it is going to pass in 2025. I think it'll pass in early 2026. I think it will get more than 10 Democrat votes on it. I think that the crypto industry will be the largest spender in the primary season of any industry. I think most people, I'm going to rephrase that. I think 20% of transactions at that time will be on stable coins or stablecoin rails, and nobody will know it, or your average person will not know it. And obviously I see a higher price for Bitcoin because of those factors.
Yeah, boy. I love that. And just so I can remember, the market structure bill, that's the one that would like make it easier to buy stuff with Bitcoin without having to like it would like create like a de minimis limit where, hey, I just got Steak and Shake. I don't need to report this. Is that the one, or is it do something different?
No, it will not be in that bill. What it will do is give jurisdiction over Bitcoin and a variety of other digital assets. I know it's a Bitcoin-centric show, but of course, anyone listening is, I'm sure, aware that there are other types of cryptos out there. It will decide who's regulator or who is the regulator of those various cryptos. It will put a variety of regulations on the exchanges. And it'll do some other things in terms of just streamlining digital assets into the financial sector.
And is the best regulator for Bitcoin the one that treats it like a commodity?
Yeah, I think, the CFTC has been regulating Bitcoin since 2018, and they frankly have done a very good job at it. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of the folks who worked at the CFTC at that time. They're very bright. They knew what they were doing. They set up a very good structure. I don't think there's a lot of conversation about where Bitcoin is going to end up. I think there is a much, much larger conversation about where other types of cryptocurrencies are going to end up.
Okay.
The digital asset space, if you ignore stablecoins, is about $3 trillion. Bitcoin is 2 trillion of that. But that's still $1 trillion out there that essentially is regulating or is lacking regulatory clarity. And I think one of the healthier things the industry has figured out in a while, at least Bitcoiners, is there's no need to go attack other projects in the way that a lot of folks did in the early days, where it was, every other type of digital asset is a scam or it's terrible. And many of them were, right? And so I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but a realization that rising tide lifts all boats rather than the, Highlander, there can only be one.
Highlander, yes. Let's chop off their head and suck all the lightning out of their body for the quickening. Yeah, dude, that show was the bomb. Your dad has episodes of that show on VHS. He pops it in every now and again. He's like, dude, this is so good. I love this episode. Let's go. So I feel like this has been a really, really interesting conversation. I feel like we've covered, your origin story as a political and economic major down there at Tulane, realizing that Bitcoin is a, valuable network, mining it, checking it out, realizing it later, getting back into it, and ultimately coming to this land where you're trying to help the government make it easier for us to do what we want to do. And I've been here for over 100 episodes talking about, my government is my gut, I'm like, and in my gut, and you're like, actually your gut is full of like trillions of tiny organisms that are helping you digest your food. And like, that's the government is actually like all these independent people acting, according to their own interests and kind of giving us a more nuanced view of the government. I think a hot take was that there is no the government. Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. I'm like, I've been talking like Gouvernement for over 100 episodes. You tell me it's not real? So let's take a break here for Chris, and then we will make you an offer.
It's not for me. It's for Ithaca Hummus, which is our founding sponsor. And by the way, Eric, if you know of any good, sturdy Bitcoin companies out there that are looking to sponsor a podcast like this one, please send them our way. We've got the Everything Bagel hummus. You can see how well we treat our sponsors here. We take a break. We taste the hummus. And Stuart's going to be your taste buds today. So let's crunch down and tell him what it tastes like. Wow. It's been a while. What's it taste like?
It's creamy.
Well, that's the texture. That's the texture.
Well, you know how my mouth isn't that, If my mouth was a video, it would be like, coming in at like 280, it's like, I don't have that 4K resolution. The first thing I experience is the fact that it feels like this hearty thing. Like if I sit here and eat that's going to help fill me up, which is a lot nicer than like, eating a mountain of raspberries and like, you just don't, when you eat like an apple and then like 20 minutes later, you're still hungry.
I actually get hungrier eating an apple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The first thing I get is like, this feels substantial. This here could be a meal for me if I really needed it to be. Mm-hmm. Then I'm getting like creaminess. I'm getting like the onion flavor of the Everything Bagel.
Yes.
And then like whatever those like poppy darker seeds. Bits are on the Everything Bagel. Mm-hmm. I'm getting some of that.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to go get like an Everything Bagel with like meat and egg and cheese and cream cheese and just like eat it.
I mean, so you would say when we call that Everything Bagel, that's accurate.
I would actually replace the cream cheese in a bagel sandwich with that.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's substantial. It's delicious, man. It really hits the spot.
All right, Eric. So this we've reached the point of the show where we get to offer you your choice between $50 and $50 in Bitcoin. For being here today.
I'm going to flip this around so that you can see your old pal, the U.S. Capitol, on here.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, so I guess.
Oh, yeah. So here we go. So let's see what we got here. I'll do this real quick like. Thank you, number 60 Simple Steve, for your wonderfully amazing UTX Oracle. So we are at... Okay, here we go. All right, so we got $50 here, right? Value for value. Thank you for sharing all this valuable information with us. $50 is our gift to you, should you like that sort of thing, or 42,004 Satoshis.
Can I throw a third option, which is, can I get $42,000 worth or Sats worth of Everything Ithaca hummus? Because that sounds delicious. And, I think the word you were looking for was umami. where it has that savory flavor for it.
Bam!
Yeah.
Dude, he's articulating my inner thoughts.
Yeah, I
This
know.
guy is a real mouthpiece for the Bitcoin industry.
Thank
And I'm
God.
actually feeling like a little bit better just knowing that Eric is out there
Absolutely.
fighting the good fight, man.
Yeah.
Anyways, today we have money and Satoshis. We can transfer these Satoshis to you, even if we're dead in the heart of China, where they're, you know, I won't say anything in case we get wrecked. But, you know, we can get this to you, and then you can go and get yourself some hummus with it or some steak and shake. So we're going to assume that you're into this option right here, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
I love it.
What I'm getting excited about is this is the second episode in a row where we've actually featured some Bitcoiner predictions, and I think I kind of like it.
It's a powerful drug.
Well, yeah. I mean, and people get addicted to it. So,
all right, Eric. So thank you for stacking the Satoshis with us. You bring our show's scoreboard to 99 guests who have stacked the sats, along with 8 who chose the cash.
need a little bit more time.
Where do you want our Satillionaires to go if they want to help support the Satoshi Action Fund, and or you know, personally, if you're just out there ripping tweets and having fun, whatever you do?
Yeah, you can go to satoshiaction.io. That is our website. You can see all the projects we're working on there. I am on X. I will tell you, if you go to follow me on X, you're going to get very little Bitcoin content. It is a lot of content about New Orleans and food and sports and, you know, some pictures of my cat up there. I try to keep it pretty light. There's enough Bitcoin content on X. But if you follow my boss, Dennis Porter, you will get all the Bitcoin content you could possibly need from him.
Nice. We should have him on the show as well. Bring on the boss man. All right. So Satillionaires, if you enjoyed Eric's, you know, guidance, you know, through that political and regulatory landscape, smash the subscribe button here on YouTube. When you do, you will be entered in for your chance to win 2 million sats when we reach 10,000 subscribers. You also need to show up Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern for our live game show, Who Wants to Be a Satillionaire? We'll be putting up 1 million sats each week that you have a chance to win. You can also go to whowantstobeasatillionaire.com to sign up for our standby line, you know, if you want to become a contestant there. So the fast way is to watch the show and play. The slow way is to sign up to come on. If you want to help us mint the brand new Bitcoiner, you can send us some Satoshis on the Lightning Network or on chain, and we will deliver them to the next person who stacks the sats here with us on the show. That information is all in our show notes, along with information for those sturdy Bitcoin companies you mentioned who might want to sponsor what we're doing here. Thanks so much, everybody, for your time. Remember, Sat Chats is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as financial advice. Also, our guests' views are their own. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.